Assalamualaikum. Very good morning to everybody. Welcome to our webinar for this morning. Thank you so much for making time for this morning's webinar. We wait for others to join us. I think at the moment we have around 29 participants. So thank you for making time of your busy schedule to join us. We'll give our friends a couple more minutes to join us. Maybe we will begin at 10:05. Dr. Fatimah, is that okay with you?
Yes, yes, that's right.
Okay, cool. Do you want to share your slides? You want to get your slides set up whilst we wait?
Okay. All right. So this is the title. I think everyone can see, right?
We'll give another minute, Dr. Fatimah, then we will start. Just another minute.
No problem. Yep.
Right, Dr. Fatimah, shall we start?
Boleh. Alright. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Let me introduce you.
Oh, can I introduce? Okay. Sila.
To your audience. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Thank you so much for making time to join our webinar series. For your information, this is our 16th webinar that we have had since the start of the year, since 2020, beginning of 2020. So for today's session, we are very honored to have our esteemed guest, Dr. Fatimah Abdul Razak, from the Department of Science Mathematics at the at the Faculty of Science and Teknologi, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. A little bit information about our very passionate and very enthusiastic presenter. She received her BSc and MSc from International Islamic University, Malaysia, before pursuing part 3 of the mathematical tripos at the University of Cambridge. I'm from the humanities. I'm not too sure what that means. We could probe her a little bit later if you're interested. Her PhD was with the Complex and Networks Group, which was later rebranded the Center for Complexity Science and the Department of Mathematics at the Imperial College London. She's a former debater, IIUM debater, and a lifelong language lover who believes that mathematics is the most beautiful language of them all, mashallah. Okay. You know, we beg to differ. I'm not too sure because I'm not very keen on that, but I see the beauty in what she's saying. She hopes to infect others with this belief and love for mathematics. So I think we are in for a treat. Her current research and multidisciplinary collaboration involved using various mathematical approaches to tell stories from data, especially using network science, complex systems, probabilistic statistical mechanics, that's a mouthful, graph theory, dynamical systems, and topological data analysis. Okay, Dr. Fatimah, you had me at the most beautiful language and stories. You know, those are the two things that I'm very keen on. So for this morning session, her topic will be networks and community for teaching and learning. Without further ado, let's welcome our esteemed guest, Dr. Fatimah. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rai, for that enthusiastic introduction. But yeah, I hope to change your mind, Dr. Rai, in terms of mathematics and everyone watching today. So
yes, hoping.
Yes, it's my lifelong aim. So at the very least, I want everyone to associate me with mathematics, and we can and not be afraid to talk mathematics with me. Tak apa. Yeah, it's okay. Everyone has their own worldview. Sebelum memulakan, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri, ya Allah, lapangkanlah dadaku, or bahasa Inggeris, lift the burden of my chest, wa yassir li amri, and ease my affairs, wahlul uqdatan, and untie the knots min lisani, on my tongue, yafkahu kauli. Yafkahu is so that all of you would understand. Kauli is my word. So I'm praying that you will understand my presentation, but also it's related to my story, because that prayer just now, on one hand, it's a prayer that I usually read in front before starting a class, because it's a prayer that Nabi Musa read when he was going to see Fir'aun, because he had a tongue problem, and he wanted everybody, not just Fir'aun, to understand his words. And it's in the Quran, Surah Taha, ayat 24 or 25, I think. But more importantly, I want to tell you that the Quran is a data, and even the meaning of the ayah is data. But what makes it more interesting to me is that underlying that data, the ayat Quran, if you just read the Quran, especially without knowing the meaning, you just okay, it's an ayat Quran, and then you read the dua without actually understanding the context of the dua, be like, yeah, okay, it's a prayer. It's, you know, the meaning is already very meaningful that you ask your Lord, so that you would understand what he or she says. But actually, underlying the networks, the relationship, underlying the story, the prayer that I read to you just now, Rabbi shrah li sadri itu, is a very interesting story, which is Nabi Musa. He asked Allah SWT to make Aaron or Harun, so Moses and Aaron, they went together to go see Fir'aun to tell him that, yeah, actually, sorry that so yeah, actually, you are not the Lord of the world. And Fir'aun was married to Asya, his wife, that actually adopted Musa in the first place. And Maryam is or Miriam, some say that's her name, not the Maryam, the mother of Isa. This is a different Maryam, Jewish Maryam. This is the sister that followed him along the riverbanks to see that he got safely to the palace of Pharaoh. So there's a whole epic story of Nabi Musa, alayhi salam, and you know, if you're not invested into the story, you can read the dua, but it won't be as meaningful to you. So but the point I'm trying to make is that you have data, but if you don't analyze the human relationship underlying the data, you won't be able, well, you may be able to tell some story, but for me, the most interesting story is the human connections and the story behind it. So one way to see human connection also is, for example, I'm mapping my research collaboration connections. So these are the people that I would like to thank because they have been my research collaborators. That's one way to map the network. So for today, I would like to outline that I would look at the underlying networks, not just of my colleagues and people at Maybank, but also my students. I would like to understand how my students make friends and teach each other. Okay, so the outline of today's presentation, the first part is I'm going to talk about, this is pre-COVID, and I still taught a very big class of 148 students, and yeah, and I collected data from them, because when you want to do research and you don't have any data, what do? You collect data from your students, right? So that's the first part. I would explain to you the data. I think the data is very easy to understand. And if you don't understand, you can just ask me questions. I will stop at certain intervals in the presentation. Second part, during the MCO, okay, disclaimer, this is my first time teaching online, completely online actually, because last semester I joined a program and during the program, I think I was a bit like a student, because I had to learn many things and do things instructed to me. So I will share my student-like experience last semester when everyone, all the other lecturers were trying hard to teach the student. I was on the other side, I think. So I would like to share this experience as well. And of course, I'm actually trying to understand the curve that needs to be flattened, because, you know, mathematics, right? And number three, I will talk a bit about the community that we have to build in our current reality, you know, post MCO, when we probably have to do online stuff, maybe forever nowadays. And how do I think we should try to adapt in the new normal? So the disclaimer will be that I am not very well versed in the teaching and learning all those goggies. I don't really even know, or maybe I use them, but I just don't know. So I wish I knew more about that. I try to watch some videos, but of course, it doesn't bring me to it doesn't, well, it's not a professional understanding, let's just say. So if I am saying something that maybe people in the teaching community already well know about, and I don't know the jargon, I apologize. And I would love if you would tell me if that's the word that I should use for certain things. So, you know, increase my knowledge as well. Please do. There's a lot I don't know. I never taught a complete semester, and yeah, new kid on block. Right. So having said that, first, once upon a time, before COVID-19 and MCO, my master student, Jaya, collected peer-to-peer networks of students. She also collected friendship networks, but because the peer-to-peer network and the friendship networks are highly correlated to each other as well, so I'm just going to show you the peer-to-peer networks in today's presentation. Okay. So first, we talk about networks. There's many ways to define relationships in the network. So the nodes can be humans when you look at human relationships. So, and the link are relationships between the humans. So in this picture, you see Datuk Nora, because we joined a CO at faculty program. And these are the fellows from many different universities. So this is me from UKM. So this is Dr. Izzat and Dr. Marwan from UIA, Dr. Fiza from UKM, and this is Datuk Nora. So she was mentoring us. This is 4 out of 54 other fellows that were attached to other different companies. This story will become relevant later on, so that's why I mentioned it now. Okay, so the notes in this case, Datuk Nora, Fatimah, Izzat, Marwan, and Fiza. The links, in this case, I defined it as mentoring links because Datuk Nora mentors each other, all 4 of us. And then this is a network with 5 nodes and 4 links, easy enough, right? The nodes are the people, the links are the relationships. Okay, next. Then you can draw a directed network mentoring relationship. So I am directed to Datuk Nora because I point to my mentee. So I am the mentee, Datuk Nora is the mentor. So in this network, she mentors everyone else lah. This is also Suri. Suri was my buddy at Maybank. Buddy is the person that actually has to look after you. You know, I meet with her every week and have a deep conversation about the direction of my attachment at Maybank. So that was fun. So we built relationships, mentoring relationships. So in a way, I consider Suri also my mentor. So you can have a directed network. This is what I call a directed network. Sebab because of the arrow pointing from one person to another. So you can have a directed network. This is a directed network with 6 nodes and 6 directed links. So there are 2 questions I want everyone to bear in mind today throughout this whole presentation. 2 questions. First question, who is the most important person in this network? Second question, what are the clusters? I know a lot of you are familiar with clusters. It's probably the same clusters you're thinking of. You'll see why. And what are the clusters in the network? What are the clusters in the network? So a cluster, you can simply say like, okay, me, Datuk Dora and Suri, we're clustering because we form a triangle. Very simply, that can be considered a cluster. And who is the most important? Well, maybe Datuk Nora because she's like in the middle, right? But I will talk a bit more about that. Okay, so this is a first view of the network of my students, 158 of them. So this is a question. I give them a questionnaire and ask them, okay, who tutors you? Who in this class tutors you? So it points from themselves as a mentee and to the person that tutors you as a mentor. So as you can see here, let's see, the sizes represent who tutors the most. So 49 tutors the most student, and then I think 145, 174, and 90. So these are the largest circle represent people that tutors represent students that tutors the most other students. But the color represents the grade. So actually, well, maybe not very surprisingly, you can see because the pink ones, there's only 2 pinks one, they are distinction, cemerlang, these students, the pink ones, right? But they're not mentoring much other people, right? So you can zoom in here, see like number 34 and 154. They do mentor some people because there are some arrows pointing to them like this, right? And they got the highest mark in the class, but they do not mentor as many as this number 49 who's got a okay lah, bawah daripada cemerlang. But maybe the teaching help him or her, or it could be otherwise, or you know, maybe the lecturer could actually help 49, 174, 94, 105. So there are things that I will go deeper into. So there are quite a few observations that we can take from just a glimpse of this network. So there are many variables in the network. You can have the size of the nodes, you can have the colors, you can have the directions, which can illuminate many different things. And then you can see here, there is this outlier student that is not mentored or mentored to by anyone else. Maybe he or she lives outside, I don't know. And these are 2 people that just communicate, just mentors each other. Okay. Right, so if you want to read more about this, there's a publication here, and I'm writing a paper that will hopefully get published in a good journal, maybe next year, inshallah. All right, so peer tutor network, a directed network. Peer tutor, you can define it as a student that tutors a fellow student, right? So in this case, I didn't put the size on just to explain the colors. So the red is the failing one, the pink is the best, and the green is the, green, this one green. The green is the pass, just pass, lulus je. And blue is merit, so not as bad as red, not as bad as green, but not as good as distinction. Okay, so this one, red, fail. Right, so and then you can see here, if you look at this small network, number 2 is the circle should be bigger actually because it's pointed to by 3 students, student 1, student 3, and student 4. Okay, all right. So that's a simple explanation of peer tutor network. Peer tutoring may be even more effective than the actual tutoring classes provided by university. Yeah. Okay. In this class that I teach, because it's a big class, right? So we actually provide tutoring from PhD students or master students to the students, but research has been done that shows that actually tutoring from fellow students are more effective than tutoring from actual tutors or even lecturer, because they tend to learn from their friends more than actual tutors. Yeah, okay, so that's why we looked into it. So how did we get the data? We gave this questionnaire to them, because we didn't have data, so we had to collect data. So we say list 10 people that that is your reference point or tutor in understanding problems. Well, at that time it was PPSM, now it's JSM, Jabatan, Sains, Matematik. So the maximum is 10 people. Okay, so and then you rank it by importance. So the first friend would be the most important tutor friend that you refer to. Okay. Next, what are networks? Okay, so networks, I introduced you briefly. It's comprised of a link and a node. Yeah, so I think just like this you see everywhere nowadays. If you want to look modern and fancy, you put like network in the background, but actually there's a lot to the network. So so in computer science, you use nodes and links. So because there's a lot of analysis coming from computer science, but in mathematics actually, where the roots are from graph theory. So we call networks graph. Quite confusing because you learn about graph in school, so that's why I didn't use the word graph in this. So you call it graph comprised of vertices and edges. So that's from the mathematics. You get it from the domain of graph theory. In computer science, you use nodes and links. In physics, you use sites and bonds, because the idea from the atomic relationship, and it forms the material. I'll talk a bit more about that also. And in sociology, the actors, the points are the actors and the relations are ties. But I think what you will be more used to is Facebook. So Facebook, the Facebooker is connected by friendship, right? So the connection is friendship on Facebook. So if you have relationship, if you have a Facebook account, you would know that you are related to another person, and a relationship on Facebook is a link in your network. And Facebook has made use of this: Cambridge Analytica, Brexit, Trump, and all that. That's a rabbit hole which I can go into, but I won't, not in this discussion. But yeah, just bear in mind they definitely use your data, absolutely. Okay, so this is a map of Facebook, 2010, it was 10 years ago. As you can see here, one country is sorely missing because China bans Facebook. So China there, obviously it started in the US, there's a lot of color there. As you can see, Malaysia is quite, shining there. Quite obvious. There's a lot of people. Indonesia, not bad. Also Philippines, and Europe, of course. Europe and US, you would expect. Africa tak sangat. Maybe now it's a lot more here. Yeah, but Malaysia, top Facebook. We're one of the best, and you just share endless information on Facebook, and they can easily make use of it, right? Anyway. So that's Facebook. Who is the most important? So back to the two questions that I outlined to you just now. So in order to identify who is the most important, you look at the network, and then I told you before, Datuk Nora is the most important here, because without her, all of us will be disconnected except for me and Suri, and then we won't have a relationship in the network. So importance in the network is also counting how many friends you have in the network, but also how much you keep the network together. So that's a small network, relatively easy to tell who's the most important in the network, right? Okay, so and here's Facebook, because if you can't picture anything else, I can ask you to picture your Facebook network friends. But if you look at a bigger network, so there's A till S there. So okay, we call it a degree centrality, the one who has most friends. So this one, J, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 friends. So it has the highest degree centrality. Degree is the number of friends you have. However, is he the most important? He or she the most important in this network? I would argue because we are humans, we can see that there are two clusters in this picture, right? We all know what clusters these days. Yeah. So, and the nodes that are connecting these clusters are actually node H and node I. So without node H, these two clusters will be completely disconnected and be separated from one another, and there will be two separate networks. So a measure to centrality, between centrality is a measure that takes into account whether a node is a connector between one cluster or not, and whether how the node keeps the networks together. So, and also node I also has high between centrality. Without the I, you won't be connected. Cool. So eigenvector centrality is actually a centrality that is used in PageRank by Google. It measures not only how many friends you have. So if you just look at the friends, this D has 5 friends, but if you look at the friend of friend, friend of friend, friend of friend, eigenvector centrality looks at friend of a friend of friend till infinity theoretically, but so it not only considers your local friends, but it also considers all your friends all the way around the network, right? And this is another measure, closeness centrality, because closeness centrality measures how close you are to everyone in the network. So if you want to disseminate information, this P is probably the best node that you can get to, because P is the node with highest closeness centrality, meaning you send this information, it can send the information faster to everyone else in that sense. Okay, so important. So the answer to the question of who is the most important, it depends on your definition of importance. Is it as a connector? Is it as having most friends? Is it having most influential friends? Is it disseminating information? And you can look at the network science jargon of centralities, right? Okay. So next, who likes to cluster? So, in a small network, you can say, oh, okay, I found a triangle. So that's cluster, me, Abdul, and SIRI. So these others are not clustered together. So, but in a bigger network, humans can tell with their eye that this is a cluster and this is a cluster. So there's 2 clusters in this network, and what is the characteristic of these clusters and why these clusters happen is very important. So that's also another important question that you would like to investigate in this relationship. So very simplest measure is clustering coefficient. Clustering coefficient, simply put, it measures the number of triangles in the network, because as you can see here from the small, from this small network, one triangle is one cluster. So which one has a high clustering coefficient? This has 1 triangle, 2 triangle, 3 triangle, 4 triangle, 5 triangles. So this has a high clustering coefficient because it has a lot of triangle surrounding. J has a high clustering coefficient because it has a lot of triangles surrounding it. So that's just a very simple way that we all have mathematical calculations that computers can do, but a simple calculation humans can just look by eye and calculate the triangle to get the clustering coefficient. Okay. So one way, if UKM-Folio has the data of interaction networks, okay, perhaps you can say, okay, nodes are UKM-Folio users, links, communication through the system if record was kept, and then arrows is the direction of the communication, meaning who initiate the communication. A talks to B, so maybe A is a student, talks to the lecturer at B, and also maybe C is another lecturer, very famous lecturer. B talks to the C as well, and D talks to C. So if we have a system that we can rely on with a lot of information in that, we can understand the networks that are formed in the UKM-Folio interaction, for example. And then what you can investigate from the UKM-Folio interaction is how does the information spread. So maybe these are all students and you want to see how these students talk to each other about their classes. Dia tak suka cikgu ke apa ke, and never mind, they're still talking. And then who are the influencers in getting their friends to learn. Like maybe after this A communicated with B, suddenly this B insaf and then focus more on his or her class, or maybe meaning this A is influencing B in a very positive way. What are the clusters formed within and between our portfolio class? Gender, program, background, who do they communicate with? Okay. So these are information that will help us tell stories from the data that you actually get if you harness these networks, network kinds of data. All right, so back to my students network, real network of my 140 students. Okay, observation one is that a lot of reds are at the edges of the networks. As you can see here, reds, remember the reds are the failing ones. So they're at the edges of the network. So they're not so connected with the others. So maybe they don't ask for help, or maybe, I don't know, they live outside. So many of the reds have low centralities in the nodes. Which is also an observation, and so there's a sort of some correlation between having low centrality and low mark. The isolates ni maksudnya orang-orang yang terpisah, people that are not connected within the big network. The isolates separated from the network did not do so great either. They didn't do too bad. Maybe they're smart and they can move on their own, but they didn't do so good. Possible action from the educator's point of view, you can incentivize more interaction between students. This is just the first observation. So okay, move on to the second observation. All right. Second observation, top 5 tutors, 49, 54, 105, 90, and 108, all obtain merit. So we're top 5, I've shown you before here. They didn't actually get the best mark, but they helped other people. So I think we would want to investigate. As you can see, their friends, most of them are not red. So I think they've been a very big help to this clump of students over here, right? They are connected to some reds, but yeah, most of their friends here are green. So that's a good sign. So maybe we can help more of this group of people as a lecturer. Okay. Sorry, next observation. Also, note rank 6 to 8, 13, 60, 77. Let's find them. Where are you? 13, 13, 60, 60, 67. 3 kat sini. Dia rank nombor 6 sampai nombor 8, 6 to 4. So they are in the middle of the network also, 60, 13, and 77. Also their friends, a lot of their friends are not very red, well, the higher ones. Yeah, so they teach their friends and help their friends, which is an observation, but you know, if you can help get their marks higher, maybe their friends' marks will also go higher. So this is what we are trying to see if we can do an experiment for students. So possible action, we can groom the top centralities to get better marks, and so the lecturer can have a targeted effort to get a ripple effect from their students. I know this is a lot of effort, that's why it's like still an experimental phase, and I haven't actually done it to my students, but now that I see from the network, you know, if I did that, maybe we can, I hope to do some sort of experiments in the future that will capture the effect of educators' action on the class. Okay, so observation 3, there are 2 distinction students, pink students, as I mentioned before, 34 and 154. They did not have the highest individual rank 13 and 20th respectively, meaning they do teach their fellow peers, but not as much. And possible action, maybe we can incentivize top scorers to teach other people, because these top scorers 34 and 54, right? As you can see, in their vicinity, well, there's red but not directly connected to 34. It's not too bad. People around them are not doing too bad, but I think they can at least try to get these people to green, maybe, right? So if you as a lecturer, maybe incentivize the students. If you teach another student, you give them extra marks or something like that. So maybe they would take the time to actually try to help their friends, because I mean, these are all their friends in the same classes, in the same class, at least this one. And they, as far as my knowledge, they go to a lot of other classes as well. So maybe we can give them incentivize, give them points in their classes for actually teaching their friends. Okay. Right. So, or you can impose make rankings online group. That takes more effort, but they might have some benefit to that, which I will talk a bit more later on. So that is the first part of my presentation. Before we move on to the MCO and COVID-19 part, I would like to ask for some feedback and maybe questions, Dr. Rai?
I have a lot because I'm very curious by nature. So I would like to hear what the audience have to say. If anybody has any questions for Dr. Fatimah, this is I love patterns, and I love to see themes. You know, coming from humanities, I see themes and patterns. So I understand the fascination and I understand the value of it as well. So are there any questions at this juncture for Dr. Fatimah? You may unmute your mic if you would like to ask Dr. Fatimah any question. Sekiranya ada soalan untuk Dr. Fatimah, boleh unmute mic dan bertanya soal dengan Dr. Fatimah secara direct. Ada soalan ke? Dr. Fatimah, can I start off first?
Silakan Dr. Rai. Saya rasa nanti adalah tu.
Allah. If you could go back to the slide before.
Okay. This one?
Okay, because I've been teaching for 25 years at the So if I had this kind of a data about my student population, there's a lot of things that I would do with it myself personally. But I want to throw this question back to you. When you told us your network, when you recently had your 6-month stint at Maybank, and asked the question, who is the most important? The word important is a construct. You know, for me, everyone can define importance from their own trajectory. So if I looked at this beautiful mapping of your students' feedback that you got from them based on the questionnaire, if I asked you this question, who is the most important in this beautiful mapping of your, how many students? 148. 148, yeah. So what's the most important for you?
For me, okay. Good question. Memang yang tu saya nak orang tanya pun, macam mana kita nak tentukan siapa yang penting. So centrality saya beritahu tadi, there was 4 centralities, right? But I think actually this one, 49, is actually very important because he or she teaches a lot of people. So if I can actually bring this 49 up, I think he or she will bring a lot of other people up with him. So my regret is I tak sempat nak bring him or her up. So if I do this again in another class and I see that at the beginning of the semester, something like that, I would focus on that student, maybe even like tutor him personally or her personally if he or she wants, because he teaches other people. For me, the spread for me is the most important.
What you get from this data is that 49 is closely in communication with a lot of his or her classmates. That's what you get from the data, right?
49 is actually being referred to in this case because the arrow points to him or her.
Albeit 49 did not get distinction.
Yes.
In class, 49 did not get distinction, but 49 was the person most referred
person in the class.
All right. Okay. Because I see, you know, when we talk about 21st century skills, we talk about the generic skills that we want our graduates to have before they leave university. Among the skills include leadership, include the empathetic skills, include communication, critical thinking. A lot of these skills, we might not grade them. So when we give them a distinction, it tends to be more content based. So 34, 54, 154, sorry, students 4 and 154. They might have the cognitive skills developed for that subject, but how far have they developed in these other skills that maybe 145 and 49 and 74 and 90 have developed. So I like
Exactly.
what is most important, especially vis-a-vis education. I like that concept very much because it's very fluid, you know, this notion of what is important and who is the most important. Yeah. Any questions for Dr. Fatimah at this juncture? Otherwise, we will get her to proceed. I'm sure she's got lots more stories to tell. Okay. Dr.
Ada soalan tu chat ni.
Yes, from our physicist friend.
Oh, I'm right. Okay.
Yeah, question.
Shows the import. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. This kind of mapping.
Do you think we can incentivize this enough? Okay, I like yang masa Dr. Imran punya presentation tu. Dr. Imran said, I tell the students to ask 3 other students before asking me, right? Okay, I think we should go further, Dr. Imran. Kalau dia boleh, kalau student tu kata, okay, this student taught me, give marks. So that's part of the marking. Of course, you can game the system, but then maybe you ask for the lukisan kat internet ke, because they have to communicate online, right? So, you know, I don't know. But if there's a way to actually give marks to students who are actually teaching their fellow students, because teaching is, for me, is also something I want to teach my students. The communication is actually the main problem, because I was at Maybank. They told me that, yeah, our workers, they can calculate stuff, but they cannot tell the story behind. So the communication is a big issue.
Absolutely.
Even my student, my actual student that is now head of risk at Muamalat, he said, for 5 years I had problem at Bank Negara. He was at Bank Negara before. I knew how to get the data, but I couldn't communicate it. So this should be a big component in the marking. But I'm not really sure how UKM approaches it and how fair. Maybe we have to let's run it first.
Yeah, I think it's worth considering this notion of incentivizing this notion, because we also had another speaker, Datuk Razak, presenting this best practices in teaching and learning a few webinars ago, and his incentive was to allocate digital badges to his student population when they perform certain soft skills, certain generic skills that maybe is not evaluated, it's not part of the learning outcome of the course. So his was to provide digital badges. So thank you so much. Could we continue, Dr. Fatimah?
Boleh. Ada lagi soalan?
Tak ada, setakat ni belum ada lagi.
I will have more breaks later on. Okay, so these are just the introduction. This is pre-MCO when you know, I was just looking at the network. Contengan ni datang pada mana? Warna biru ni? Getting confused. Alright. Okay, seriously, I don't know where this contengan is coming from, because my pen is red. So yeah, okay, never mind. All right. During the MCO, I wanted to make sense of the spread, and I had a student-like experience, and also everybody was saying, is there a crisis of higher education because, you know, you don't go to university, you can't use the library and all that. But I'll tell you a bit about the virus first. That's it. That's the thing that's behind, you're thinking about it all the time, right? So, okay. Mathematics and the notorious curve, I think this went around in our group chat at JSM, like the teacher was teaching exponential function in the class, and then the students were like, nah, apa benda. But then you look at flattening the curve, which is the exponential curve, you remember your class, and how important is it that you actually know what it means, okay? So let's look at the curve. This wonderfully notorious curve. Okay, so, oops, wrong one. Okay, so you're supposed to press down on the curve so that the curve flatten. But what does it mean to flatten the curve actually? Have you ever thought about that? I'm sure a lot of you have, and it means to reduce the height of an epidemic peak and or delay the peak and reduce the number of infection so that the hospital capacity is not is there, and it doesn't go over the hospital capacity. Alhamdulillah, in Malaysia we're still okay, I think. I don't want to jinx it, but inshallah we will get through this. But actually the modeling, if you look behind it, it's called the SIR model, where you model this number of infected people. So first you have susceptible ni, maksudnya dia boleh berjangkit. Recovered ni, okay, sometimes recovered is called recovered or just disappeared ataupun mati. So na'udzubillah min zalik, but you know that COVID-19 has a few deaths. So the red curve is actually the curve that you want to delay or you want to flatten. You don't want the number of infected go to a higher number. So this is actually the curve that you see in the news all the time. This is actually just a cartoon. I'll show you the actual curve from the paper that I was studying really hard at the first week of the pandemic to understand what's actually going on. Anyway, so the red curves needs flattening. So this curve is modeled on a very simple model. Say the world, there's a lot of susceptible people, there's a lot of infected people, there's a lot of recovered people. So there's a kumpulan orang yang susceptible, a group of infected people. They can become infected, they will join this group at a certain rate, and they will recover at a certain rate using this SIR model, which stands for susceptible, infected, recovered model. That's a very simple model that I was made to understand that Imperial, this was undergraduate content, but unfortunately not in Malaysia. But I learned about it when I went to Imperial, when my friend asked me, I was like, you didn't learn SIR in schools, in undergraduate? I was like, okay, now I know. But still, a lot of people in Malaysia are looking into it right now. Anyway, this is one view of people you can look at. Okay, this is a group of people together, this is a group of people together, and R is another group of people together. But actually, this is not reality. In real life, how is it actually? It's a network of people, contact networks. That's why you need contact tracing. That's why you have to ask them, who are you in contact with, right? So the susceptible people are scattered, the infected people are scattered, and they are connected in a network. So SIR has been modeled on a network. So all the papers that I've read, they have like an underlying contact networks to model this SIR onto it. So the contact networks underlie the spread of any virus that spreads to contact, right? Okay, so in COVID-19, just a very simple modeling. Don't worry, there's no equations. I would just simply, I'm just simply talking about the thing that you've been watching on the news all this time, clusters and contact tracing, right? Okay, so prolonged contact is the thing that spreads COVID-19, right? So there's three culprits maybe in the modeling that gave you the curve that people say has to be flattened. They took into account, very simply, household, school, and workplace. This is the basic thing. Of course, they had a lot more other variables, but I just want to give you an example. So a simple example would be two households. Kat sini, there will be a blue household and grey household. So grey household, the kids go to the same school together. The mother and another kid, the mother teaches at the same school as another kid, and the parents go to work at a factory together, green factory. So how do you get a contact network? It's a very simple contact network from this just two households. So first you have blue household, then you have grey household. And that's the connection between these two households. Of course, everybody in this household is connected to each other by virtue of their relationship in this household. So bear in mind, nodes are human, links are relationship between these humans. So, all right, so how do you build the network? So first you build a blue house and grey house. Of course, all the contents, well, not the contents, the people living in this house are connected to each other, but then they're connected to the same school or the same factory. So you get this is what you call a bipartite network. Don't worry about this fancy name. Bipartite only means bipart, two parts, meaning there's network ni, it has two parts. The first part is made up of human. The second part is made up of places. That's the only meaning. So don't you worry about the jargons. Just one side human, one side places, and you connect them. I mean, it's very easy. Your kid can do it. It's like a simple puzzle, right? Anyway, so once you get this bipartite network, you can project it into a contact network, which highlights relationship between these people in the household. Okay, so this is the blue household, and this is the gray household, and this is the connection through the orange school. This is the connection through the yellow school, and this is the connection through the green factory. So you get a very simple contact networks of two households. So imagine the data you will need to get a contact network for the whole country, which is what these few groups have done that I will show you. This is a paper from Imperial College London, which was published online on the Imperial College website in March. So before this paper, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, was all about like herd immunity. We're gonna rush through it. But if you zoom in at this graph, actual graph from the Imperial College paper, okay, so you can see the line, the NHS line here, the red one, all right? The NHS line is very low. So you can see even if the case are, so the blue is the case isolation, home quarantine, social distancing of more than 70s, they will still go over the NHS line a bit. So when Boris Johnson and his team saw this, they freaked out and they made a U-turn due to this paper actually, and they suddenly, okay, we're gonna have a partial lockdown. So academic papers do impact the world. So this team at Imperial, led by Professor Neil Ferguson, and then this report, famously known as the Imperial Report, changed the UK government policy because of this graph. And this graph freaked a lot of people out. And this is where you probably, I should say, flattening the curve came from. And there's another group in the US which model the meta population of the world. Very challenging modeling, and they conclude that Wuhan quarantine, where Chinese actually put the whole area under lockdown, reduced international transmission by 80%. So kudos to them in terms of that. So there's so many models what to believe. So if I was to give some advice based on my reading, there's data-driven model, there's a contact networks based model, and they have a solid modeling behind it, then you can believe some of it. However, these models also have a lot of criticism on them. Okay, flattening the curve. Bear with me, we'll get back to education soon. Okay, so if you so this model, this is the cartoon version. So this is I think dalam the star. This is the cartoon version of the academic paper model. There's a lot of these models all around. Okay, right. Flattening the curve. There's a lot of criticism to this method of getting the contact networks because the disease spread actually happens like this. Because this person worked from home, this person didn't go to the barbecue, didn't fly, stayed at home. So a lot of this, the friends were safe, right? So it's not actually just home, school, and work, right? But you know, that's the basic estimate, and I think it's not an easy thing to do in itself. Okay, so disease spread. And famously, we had super spreader events. This is masjid apa ya, yang tabligh cluster, and then in Bangi we had like cluster orang kahwin, wedding cluster, I'd say, right? So these are super spreader events that can spread and not taken into account into the modeling because you only think that home, workplace, and schools are places people go. But of course, there are special events and that people didn't take into account. So the criticism to the models about the curve, but they didn't include these things. So clusters and super spreader individuals as well. So back to the two questions, remember who is the most important? So who is the super spreader individual and what are the clusters, right? So who is the super spreader? It depends again on your question. So again here, if super spreader dia Datuk Nora, quarantine her, sorry Datuk, and then we all will be safe. So here, if you want to keep this cluster safe from this other cluster, quarantine this guy. If you want to keep this cluster safe once infected, this guy quarantine will probably be most effective. And if you want to save this cluster, you should probably quarantine this guy. But you know, once it's spread, then there are many ways to do it. But who is the super? If I'm going to if the question is asked, who is the super spreader individual or super spreader node? It also depends on your depends on what do you mean by importance, like Dr. Rai said just now. You want to prevent the spread, you want to prevent the spread within the cluster, you want to prevent countrywide spread, that is probably the aim. So centralities, that's one way to look at the spreading. Who likes to cluster and why does cluster happen? That's also a very important thing. So maybe they're from the same household, maybe this one is from the same workplace, maybe this one is from the same school. So who likes to cluster? If we can get the contact networks of these people, which actually part of my proposal, which has been rejected, but never mind, we can get the networks of the Malaysian people, because there's also a danger of the government having your data and other people having your data. So that's understandable. Clustering coefficient is very important. As you can see, what are the clusters form, and you can understand the spreading mechanism even more. Okay, so contact networks, COVID-19 spread, it explains why contact tracing and isolation and quarantine is very effective. So the Malaysian government, up to a point, has done a very good job, I think, and super spreaders and clustering events are really obvious when you think of it from a network point of view. Okay, so that said, what does this have to do with learning? Viruses are not the only thing that spread through networks. As you can see, my student networks. Learning is also a thing that spreads from individual to individual, but you do not want to flatten the learning curve. You want it to stay up here. So this is something called the adoption curve. So in marketing, maybe the product wasn't so popular, and then they marketed, it got popular, and stayed popular here. So in terms of learning, you want, initially everybody wasn't so sure about this subject, and then the friends say, okay, let's learn, we get to a higher level, and we want to stay at the higher level. We want we want the largest amount of people to be able to stay at that higher level. So we want the learning curve to be the best that it can be. Okay, so now, and I was watching Prof. Karim punya talk hari itu, and he said that you needed an online community of inquiry, which was, I was thinking about that because, you know, COVID-19, and whether are the communities actually formed among the students that never actually seen each other in the class. And that was the students' worry as well, because I was together in their Minggu 3M, Minggu Mesra Mahasiswa, and they were like, Doktor, kami tak pernah jumpa, ada sama lain semua online sahaja. So I think the aim of us actually teaching in the class is to create the community of inquiry. So we must aim to create a group of individuals, the nodes and the networks, who collaboratively engage in critical discourse and reflection to construct mutual understanding in the class. Okay. Collective identity theory, well, it's not my idea. Karl Marx has talked about it. A group can have kind of collective consciousness, you know. So when there's a certain group, maybe you like this class more than the other class. Why do you like that class? Because orang-orang ni semua best. How do you capture the orang-orang ni semua best too? It's like a collective consciousness. And how did that happen? If you think about it, how did this collective feeling emerge? Why do you feel like, oh, I'm so proud of this class, but not really, I'm not really invested in this other class, right? So, well, that's idea from Karl Marx. And as Professor Nicholas Christakis also physician and sociologist. He says that the reason humans are intelligent is the necessity not to make tools, but rather to make friends. Make friends, to tutor your friends and teach your friends other things would be my addition to that. And even if you look at the Quran, right? Ya ayyuhal insan, or human, inna khalaqnakum, surely we created you min zakarin or unsa. Min zakarin, zakarin is man, unsa is women, lelaki dan perempuan. Wa ja'alnakum, and we created you syu'uban. Syu'uban is races, wa qabail, kabilah, kabilah, berpuak-puak, different, what do you call that? Different clans, lita'arafu, so that you could get to know one another. So that's the point. That's why we are humans. That's why we are on this earth, whichever way you look at it, like psychologically or religiously or any, like from any point of view, right? So there's sort of an emerging collective emotion that I feel that as educators, we should harness in the class, and we should make the others try our best to get this collective emotion and get them high-spirited to teach each other, to learn together, right? So collective emotion, so that we want to work hard and put in the effort together. So we can use the super spreader, the popular kids, the influencer, the very good kid that teach other people and clusters to exacerbate the spread of the learning bug among the students. And this collective behavior is a special attribute of the group. You cannot get it in individuals. Yeah, okay, this one I will talk about this more. So the whole is greater than the sum of the individuals would be my thesis for today. Okay, so ideas and learning as a virus. So, virus, you don't want the penyakit virus, but you want the learning bug. My aim, when I'm teaching, I try to get the student into the learning bug. I try to tell them why I'm doing this. I'm telling you the idea. I'm not trying to make you a robot that can calculate things blindly without understanding. No point competing with the computers. You're the human, you're the brain. You need to know the underlying notions, not just calculating. What's the point of that? Computers can do that. So I always tell them, this is why you're learning, this is why you're doing that. Okay, so you want to spread the learning bug. For me, if you ask, is there a crisis of higher education? There's no need for you to join university anymore. You can just watch videos at your own time. Well, perhaps if you're brilliant enough to go there on your own, yes, but no, if the university is the hub of spreading the learning bug, because that's where great minds get together and then exchange ideas. Like even Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, they went to university and then they made their friends. And it's the friends that is the most important thing, maybe not the education, because they both drop out. So it's like, the university is the hub of spreading the learning bug. That's, for me, is the role, the spirit of the university. And if we lose that spirit by being only online and we can't cultivate the same spirit and environment, then we're in crisis. Okay, so personal experiences, student point of view, collective learning. So like I said, last semester I wasn't teaching. So I was joining the CEO faculty program. So I was actually a bit like a student. So let me show you some pictures. So we had to take this class, introductory case writing, yeah, by Prof. Zaina Abdul Muhammad. So I was always like online, and and then there's one Tan Sri Zul from IUM, so that was me online as well. Leadership without soul, and if you take a picture, this is like our post lah. So this was me. Tersengih kat sini, but ini gambar skema. But actually behind the scenes was actually happening with all of us. Actually, we were like communicating WhatsApp group. Okay, so this is the WhatsApp group we're all in, but this is the most recent one. So the other one rahsia lah, yang dulu tu rahsia. But what my point is, we sort of grapple with new information together. So we were always on the WhatsApp group, say, what is he saying? Does it make sense? Am I the only one who doesn't understand this? But so you get like instant validation from your other friends. So other friends like, yeah, I don't understand it as well. Sometimes you even, you feel empowered to ask questions because you know that in the group, the other friends also say, tak faham juga. So somebody will, and they were like, oh, ask question, we'll back you up in the group. So if you have like this communication channel, what the class is going on, it's a great, it's a great peer-to-peer learning apparatus. It's a rich classroom experience and you feel connected and we're all in this together and, apalah pensyarah ni tak pandai ajar ke apa. I don't even care if my students say that about me as long as they give me feedback and I try to make the class better, right? It's a good self-correcting mechanism for the educators. In fact, sometimes my students say, oh, this. I was like, oh, I was trying to do like a math equation in class and I was like, I think there's an error somewhere. Okay, someone tried to figure out the error. I'll give you bonus marks, things like that. So I think they probably communicated in their WhatsApp group and found the error and then good job to them. So it's a very, this whole behind the scene communicating between students, I feel is very much needed in our current situation. And I feel like we should try to make them talk to each other in whatever way. Okay. And I hope they are talking to each other. I think the students that been in the class together, they are already talking to each other, but the students that are new, that haven't met each other, they might not. So maybe we have to find a way to cultivate these communication amongst them. So for me, I think it was a very effective peer-to-peer learning. And in fact, I might have learned more from my peers than the actual lecture, which is the whole point of a class, I think, So learning doesn't matter where the knowledge comes from. Well, hopefully it's a proper source, but Okay, so so that was activities from KPT that we had to go through, and then there were activities at Maybank. So Maybank, very brilliantly, I would say, like the first week they weren't sure. I stayed at home most of the time during my Maybank attachment. But I was constantly online, jumping from session to session, learning a whole bunch of things very wonderfully. There was a session called Learning Never Stops that started just immediately 1 week after the MCO. They run this out, and for example, I had my own session, so I taught this course at Maybank like 5 times and to Maybankers all over the world. I mean, I think almost 200 people, 200 Maybankers joined in. So of course I talked about the same thing, networks, like well, but there were also other things. We're talking about farming and how to grow your own plants because everybody's staying at home and they needed some sort of outlet, and social media marketing if anyone wants to go into digital marketing. So it's very, very good. And I joined a few classes and I wanted to share a few things that I learned from the session, and I'm sure the lecturers already know all this, but maybe I was the one who wasn't aware to all this. Maybe I dah tertinggal all the pengajaran punya talks, and maybe the lecturers already shared all these things, but I just want to share and hopefully it will be beneficial. So the first thing that I want to share about is breakout rooms on Zoom, which is amazing. So this breakout room, I was from Kuala Lumpur and there was a person from Philippines, and I think this guy was also from KL. And Jamboard, if you ever use Google Sheets or Google apa, Word macam Word document Google tu. So this one, everybody can contribute. They can put like this sticky notes together. So I think this one I did with my friends and we typed it at Jamboard. So this real-time collaborative things, even in a class, which I didn't know anyone in this class, so it's just like my bankers joining a thing. It was fun and it was engaging, and I felt like, oh, we're in a team together, we want this. So this is a way where you can encourage this sort of relationships and community, which I have argued is an important part of the class, to make them feel like they are in it together by using breakout rooms and Jamboard. So in Teams, I haven't actually tried to create breakout rooms. I intend to try in my LMCK class next week because there's a method to split them out in groups, but not exactly the way in Zoom. So if anyone knows how to do that, please let me know. And then this is So Maybank paid leaderonomics. Leaderonomics talk about leadership, communication, and listening. So I really love these kind of talks. So I was joining their classes. So their classes, we can only comment because they have their own platform there, but they have a lot of brain teasers, wonderful brain teasers. I don't actually remember what this question was, but I answered beggars over there. So I'm guessing like who really needs listening? I don't know who don't really need so much verbal skills, something like that. So it's very fun brain teaser, and the answers are usually very interesting. So I would encourage that in terms of competitive spirit, and the thing that the student can remember. So, oh, remember that quiz? I won and you lost, and things like that. Bring the class together. Chat and message board. It's a valuable collective experiences. Well, this one, we can do polls in Teams. We can you can follow, we can do polls, we can do handouts, and you can follow, right? But the feedback, I think, is very good experience, because you can transform the class into a space of collective learning by people actually commenting on the site. And a few lecturers have I asked about this. They say that the student ask more questions through the chat than they do in normal class. So it is my opinion that it can help the student keep their attention even while just commenting on, okay, cikgu ni nampak lain hari ni, without being rude or interacting. Well, at least they're getting their fellow students to focus on the class, right? Which is my personal experience in the group with the other fellows as well. So we were laughing, but in the end, we were still focusing on the class, right? And there's this sort of collective emotion created. I didn't know all these other people because they were Maybankers, but I feel I wanted to work hard and put in the effort together as a class. Okay, of course, polishing your presentation. Yeah, this one I'm still very guilty of not following. What colors are the best, but at least I know, and I can find the reference, and I will try my best to get the colors to look nicer and not hurt the eyes of my students, and be nice to the people I'm presenting to. Small chunks and yoga breaks. So at Maybank, they definitely say you have to have your presentation in small chunks, which is why I stopped a bit in the middle, just the beginning, and I would like to stop again after this and practice what I'm preaching. So this was Olga from the GHC group, and she even did yoga in our 5-minute break, and it's like, okay, walk around, look at the trees, take care of your eyes, take care of your back, go up, move around. I think, and in my own class now, I give breaks like this, and I actually schedule the breaks in the slides of the presentation so I don't forget it. Yeah. So this is the class I taught at Maybank called Humanizing Data Through Networks. So this is the program, the CEO Faculty Program 2.0 AIS Exchange that brought me to Maybank. So I talk about the same thing because I was talking to Datuk Nora from the JC group. JC meaning Group Human Capital, meaning she treats the human as a capital to the bank, which there's some controversial in that as well. But nonetheless, humans are very important. So I talk about links and the relationship between humans. So this is the same group of students which I plotted according to race color. So guess what this race is, and this race is. So, and this is Nora. So my point here is that I did my PhD in the complexity networks group. So a complex network is a network in which something else emerges from the networks as a whole that couldn't have possibly emerged from just one or two individuals interacting together. So from students working together, I would say like this learning bug could spread and take over the whole class, and they have like this passion and enthusiasm for learning. And this is actually a picture of the internet. And you can see like this is, well, if you want to go deeper, the self-similarity pattern of just the connection on the internet networks. Okay, the fractal-like pattern you can see in nature, you can also see in the human-made network, which is the internet. This is like, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I said my supervisor is a theoretical physicist, even though he's from the applied mathematics department. So the idea of these complex networks comes from physics. So the similarity between this pencil and this diamond is that they're both made of carbon atoms. So carbon atoms, uh, so the pencil is graphite, right? And the diamond is a diamond, which you can make in a lab, as I know what some of my friends told me. But you know, the graphite has this connection and the diamond has this connection, even though the atoms are exactly the same. So the analogy to the students and the emergence of something from the network interaction is that on your own, you may be able to achieve something, but as a structure of a group together, you may be able to achieve being a diamond or a pencil. I mean, graphite is important in its own right. So connection really matters, and it brings out something that was not in the individual atoms. So that's why physicists really believe these things and spread the idea to the complex networks understanding. So with that, next break, we can talk about the network effect, which is the spreading effect that can spread the learning bug. So I'll take another break, Dr. Rai.
Sure. Any questions from our listeners, from our viewers? A quick summary, Dr. Fatimah, if I may. Some of the things that I got from this second half of the session, one of the things that you talked about is how the educators, as an educator, we need to curate the learning experience of our learner, and we need to create the space for students to create this kind of networking. As an introvert myself, I'm not big on socializing. I'm not one to kind of like go out there and reach for people and everything. But when it comes to learning, I love asking questions. So I agree with you. We need to give them opportunities. We need to give our learners opportunities to ask questions. And sometimes it's easier to ask your fellow classmates because maybe your question doesn't come across so silly. Whereas if you ask the professor, you might feel a bit overwhelming, is my question good enough? So I agree with you there. I love analogies, coming from literary background. I love analogies. I love metaphors. So I love this idea of infecting students with the bug of learning. I love that idea, and it's a tall order. Among other things that we have to do as educators, we also need to impact our students with the love for learning. But I think you are absolutely right. It goes a long way because I love that idea of complex network. This is the first time I'm hearing it. This question that you asked, well, I inferred from what you said. What else can emerge from that network? You might have your course learning outcome. You might have certain things that you have set for that semester for that course. But what else can emerge from that complex network? Will it be a diamond? Will it be a pencil? I just love that idea. And your final statement just before we took a break, you said connections really matter. I mean, I know you were talking metaphorically vis-a-vis the connections of the atoms and all that. And when it's compressed, it becomes a diamond. And when it's not, it becomes a pencil. But I love that idea that as an educator, we may have our own targets of what we want to achieve for that course, but the students can take it 5-6 notches higher if we give them the right space. So I high five to you. I love the statements that you are making. So I welcome any questions. Do you all have any questions for Dr. Fatimah? I'm sure you're having fun so far. I hope I'm not the only one enjoying this. Okay, we've got a question. Here you go. Dr. Fatimah, do you want to take this?
Which one? Yang Dr. Leong, Did
Yes.
49 show leadership skill and kindness? Believe you saw him or her. Unfortunately, I didn't actually observe him or her sebab the analysis was done afterwards, after the class. So I wasn't teaching the class anymore, unfortunately. So my cita-cita pada masa hadapan, if I can, because I did do one survey at the beginning of the class when they weren't friends with each other so much, and another survey at the end of the class. But after we got these two survey, the analysis was long into the next semester. So hopefully next time I do this, we can actually observe first year, second year, third year, kan? Then maybe you can see, oh sebenarnya batch ni sangat bagus, because we had this discussion with our fellows. Batch ni bagus, batch ni tak bagus, tapi batch ni bagus kenapa? Maybe they have good leader, maybe they have disconnectors between people. So you know, we want that in our student, and we want them to be friends forever and bring themselves and the university's name to a higher level. It's not just our class, it's their lifelong relationship.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Leong.
Actually,
Kalau ada data bagus. Yes.
That's a question I had, but you've already answered it. At what stage did you disseminate the questionnaire, and how soon can you get the data which you can then manipulate for your own purpose? But you've answered that. Okay, we've got a question from Imran. How long does it take before we as lecturers can begin to detect and distinguish different characters among our students? By the second week, by the third week? Because you it was that the students were not friends yet.
Yes,
So,
first year.
Yeah, so
actually, I think this semester a lecturer from USIM is using our questionnaire, because we copyrighted the questionnaire, and siapa nak guna questionnaire tu boleh in their classes, and then we can analyze together. It would be really nice. And furthermore, Malaysia has a very special racial composition that is unique to the world, and we can show the world how we work together. Racial composition.
Racial, yeah, okay.
Racial composition. So that will be part of my publication, trying to get like into good journals that like these interactions among different race, which is the hot topic nowadays with BLM.
Right. Yeah? So our Malaysian demographics, be it ethnicity or even class.
And actually maybe education background, matrix, STPM. So it's like it was separated from before even. Right? It will be racial. Yeah. That's an angle I'm looking at.
As Dr. Fatimah, as a question asked here, that means at this stage you have not experimented with disseminating the questionnaire maybe week 5, like at the first week and then at the end. But
I think it was week 4, before the mid semester and after the mid semester. So at the first, so you can see the different friendship ties definitely increase, the number of links definitely increase. So that's why we were so happy to analyze, but it takes a long time. Sampai sekarang pun saya masih lagi menulis, and I'm discussing with my friends at Imperial, and they were like, oh, this is very interesting because you have this racial composition and education background. We're really trying to dig deep into it and see what we can get from just the 149 students, but there are colorful students, and so, but to extract the data from the questionnaire tu, you need a very rajin student lah. So that was my student Jaya, that is now working at Maybank in data analysis. Probably because she can tell the story to the bankers, right? So so it takes quite an effort juga, tapi itulah, I was talking to my friend, cakap tak boleh ke kita buat Google Form je ke, ataupun kita macam contoh yang saya beri dekat UKM Folio tadi ke, kan? So if you can just, UKM Folio ada data tu, I can extract, I can analyze, communication, underline it. Okay, maybe UKM Folio tu, student tak communicate kat UKM Folio, tapi mungkin dia boleh tanya soalan, okay, siapakah rakan rujukan anda? So dia masukkan nombor metrik ke apa ke, so we can map together. So if we have like this sort of integrated system where data is macam senang je, so lecturers pun boleh tengok. So you can, this is my like cita-cita mungkin masa hadapan, we can work on it. If pengajaran has some grant, pengajaran thinks it's worth it, worth to invest in this, and we can have this sort of system lah in place.
Dr. Fatimah, there is a question. How do you address, there's a word missing, participant 129639. How do you address your experiment at this pandemic?
Okay. Well, maybe on one level, I can tell participant 129639 that I am actually trying to simulate the pandemic spread on my students. Nauzubillah min zalik. But it's like, okay, if the university is open, apa akan jadi? Because, you know, contact networks is what I have. So, trying to simulate and see, okay, in one class, dia akan jadi spread dia macam ni. So, that's one way if it's pandemic. And lagi satu yang pandemic data tadi, if we can use data from Jabatan Perangkaan, from our census data, and then we can transpose data into a Malaysian contact network estimation, because I don't think anyone has done that yet. It has been done in the UK, and Imperial College Spin Data has been done in the US by the team at GLIM, and a meta population estimation has been done, but not at a really ground level. So if I can get my hands on that kind of data and that kind of thing, that will be some sort of spread. I think that's what the government is trying to do, but I'm not sure who's going to analyze their data in what way. Yeah. So.
Okay. Can we move on? We've done 1.5 hours. Can we move on to the final part of your presentation?
Boleh. Oh, tak apa Dr. Liang, saya akan jawab pasal MCO ni kejap lagi in my next part of presentation. Alright, thank you. All right, so all this came about because I was at home, MCO, thinking about macam mana ni nak ajar and macam mana ni penyakit tersebar. So I was like, okay, need to think about the world, and I was reading a lot of pandemic papers. So I mean, should have made the connection earlier, but yeah, it took a pandemic to make me see these things, right? So the network effect is actually you can look at the product promotion. Once an influencer really promotes a thing, it has a network effect sebab follower dia semua percaya dengan influencer tu and then adopt the product. And you know, once the super spreader is in there, it spreads because of the network effect. The network effect gives the exponential spread. And if you can get to the influencers in the group, people that can really influence their friends, you can exacerbate the network effect in your class, and hopefully it would not be hampered by the COVID-19. So, right. So post-MCO, talking about post-MCO, physically distanced, but hopefully socially closer. I'm certainly socially closer with some people that I've communicated online a lot. So you need to build community, and you know, this is the new normal. This is, we have to really rethink of what we can do. And I myself, I'm not sure, but there's a few things that I can probably suggest. Okay. All right. So first, leaders and educators as facilitators. So this was former VC, Dato' Hamdi and Dato' Imran. So meeting, these were the 4 fellows from UKM. Dr. Dian from Open Learning, Dr. Han went to CIMB, I went to Maybank, and Dr. As, I think she's also joining. Hi, Dr. As. She is from FSK and she went to Ericsson. So we had a meeting with Prof. Handi before he left, it was a fun meeting, and he was asking us, okay, so what is a leader to you? But after thinking some more about his question, I think my answer for now is that leader, just like an educator, is a facilitator in the group, responsible of creating the sense of community. So a leader is responsible to create the sense of we are in it together for the workplace, and then maybe the workers under the leader would come up with some sort of innovation or creative ideas. But for us educators, we are also leaders, and for me, we have the responsibility of creating this sense of community in our class. So there's many ways of trying to create a sense of community. So in Maybank, one way after the MCO, we had this is Maybank Academy in Bani. Dato' Nora had like the GHC it's like a gathering lah, and then we all presented, but we all had to wear a hat because, you know, it create this sense of community. So we all remember, it was like, oh, the hat thing, you know, like we all had to wear a headgear, and we all had, each of the fellow had to present, but then there's the hat and there's the tiger, because the Maybank tiger. So there are things, that small things that would bring up the sense of community. So for UKM, maybe young Prof. Hamdi highlight in his speech, KAMI, KAMMII is the thing that you can highlight and say okay, community, the sense of community in UKM. And even Prof. Hamdi said that, you know, kelebihan UKM is the strong sense of community, where the lecturers are ready to sort of berkorban for their for the students or maybe for each other. So that's our strength at UKM, and others, other university probably has their own strength and their sense of community as well. All right. So the community is mostly built on online communication. So this was my team at Maybank. And on this side, there's a team buku policy. We didn't make much in real life, but we were talking so much in the WhatsApp group, and then we were like, oh, so excited to see you, can't wait to see you. And then we just going to this thing just to see you guys actually. So we sort of build this online rapport, probably due to a good leader as well that drove us into the right direction and right communication channel. Ustaz Wadi from UNT, I think he's a good leader. And then at Maybank also, Izak is our leader actually. So we had great online communications. We had a lot of Zoom meetings, but also just through WhatsApp. So I think building online communities is possible, even though we met like once or twice before, but I think most of our bonding was done online. Okay, so human networks tend to cluster. So like I said, this was separated by ethnicity and this probably by gender, because there's a network study that look at top leaders. So top men leaders, they tend to have high centralities. Remember the centrality, the importance measure. But top women leaders, they tend to have not just high centralities, but also high clustering coefficient within a small group at the top. So this is, well, I like to imagine myself as being clustered with Datuk Nora together as the same gender, and the cluster is the same gender in the top women leader as well. So these are some differences you can see between in gender and in race. So student perempuan maybe suka bersama-sama, student lelaki dia loner sikit, based on general average view. But I myself, I am an introvert, so I still am kind of a loner sebenarnya, but I also like my girlfriends. So we'll see, you know. I like hanging out with friends, but and I communicate with my girlfriends. So my girlfriends are a strong pillar of support for me. And at Jabatan Sains Matematik, we're very close with I'm much close with my girl colleagues lah. All right, so men and women network behavior different, as I told you before. This one is a very famous journal in sociology, James Moody, where Friendship Network of School at US School. So if I'm not mistaken, the white ones are the white ones, the yellow ones are the white students, the green ones are the blacks, and the red ones are Hispanic, if I'm not mistaken. So this is their friendship relationship. So yeah, as you can see, it's quite strongly race-based. Okay, so causes of clustering. What causes clustering? The second point I asked you to remember. So these are 3 causes of clustering as far as I can see. There's probably a lot more, but first one, there's induction. So in the example of peer tutor, you can think of it as like the hardworking friend influence the other friend, and the other friend pun macam terpengaruh sebab satu bilik ke satu kelas ke, bila tengok macam ish tak boleh jadi ni. There's induction. The second one is homophily in the social science jargon. But and also birds of a feather flock together, maksudnya dia sama bangsa, sama jantina, you know, the same background, education background. So they have something in common and they bonded based on this similarity. And the third factor is a confounding outside cause. So they bonded because they were in the same class, the same university, the same course. So, you know, they were brought together and they know of each other. So they have some experience. So maybe in this confounding part, we can actually try to push it a bit. We can try to create these ties among them. Okay, so this is an important point that I want to make, because clusters and diversity are good, but weak ties are powerful. So this is Visible Network Labs. Is actually a company that works with a lot of non-profits, even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to actually build an effective network, a collaboration network amongst them. So for achieving certain goals. So I've been looking into their work, and they're really doing a lot of good work, especially in terms of COVID-19 and distributing. And they even have like a partner software that you can buy if you want to, they have the questionnaires in there. It's like they want to have like mindful relationship and actually build relationship between companies. So what they preach is that, firstly, more isn't always better. So maybe you say, oh, semua orang kena rapat in this class. No, it's not necessarily good, because when you have too much time, too much ties, it's very hard to maintain. So maybe you just maintain one or two very strong ties, and to make your organization more effective. Well, for the students, I think they also have like only just 1 or 2 close friends, or maybe they have a friend group of 5 people, maybe, and then if it's a big group, they have like subgroups in their friend group, and not all ties are the same. So you have strong ties within close friends lah, in terms of students, but you have weak ties. Weak ties are very important because there's been a research done on how you get jobs, and then in the research they say that you get jobs usually through weak ties, because if you look at the people in your strong ties, they already know each other, and the people they know. But if you look at people with weak ties, you reach out to a different part in the network, and usually they will have strong ties with other people, and then the information will flow further. So weak ties are very, very important. This is where I think we can try to form the weak ties in the class between the cluster of different races or different gender. Put them in the same group, maybe they would have good experience, work together or something like that. Hopefully they would have good experience. Otherwise, the tie would be severed, even worse than before. Hopefully not. And then you maintain weak ties, because maintaining weak ties are not easy. You need to maintain these weak ties because you want their knowledge, and you want the information from the other subgroups as well. So that's the idea in terms of companies. But I think the same network idea applies to students as well. So avoid being physically distant and socially disconnected, which was what Dr. Young was asking me just now. How do you, so this one is a picture of a disconnected network. How can we try to make sure that this doesn't happen to our students? Ada satu group sini, satu group sini, they're not talking to each other. So, okay, I think as lecturer, we can try to cultivate these weak ties for effective peer-to-peer learning. I don't know, get them talking in WhatsApp group, put them in assignment group together, or I don't know. I'm still looking myself, but that's some of my suggestions. And avoid the students from being completely cut off from the social network of their friends and information, so they won't be professionally and socially isolated. I have some recommendations for intervention for teachers and educators. Maybe first, you can try to use the contagion or influencer effect. So you can, I don't know, maybe you can just ask your students, siapa yang paling popular, who do they look up to? And or if you have network data, you look at the top centrality student, the top tutor or the top friend. Doesn't even have to be a tutor, he or she might be popular. You target efforts on these people for a ripple effect or network effect that would spread a lot more in the network, right? So secondly, you incentivize the top scorer to teach the other, like I said before, bagilah markah banyak for teaching others ke, I don't know, maybe 10% of the marks you can for teaching others, maybe in your, because now we need to find like more innovative ways to give marks to a student, right? So I don't know how feasible that is, or I have never done it, but I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna try this in the next semester, because this is my first semester, so I'm just still trying to grapple with the teams and the UKM for you pembaru. So yeah, still on a steep learning curve, so I dare not do too much at one time. Secondly, perhaps we can use the connections. So firstly, we can encourage more collective online activities like the ones I suggested, maybe do the breakout room, or do the Jamboard, or do the brain teaser so they can answer, or encourage more communication on the message board on the side so they feel more engaged and more like a class. And maybe, okay, they would have some sort, the connection in the class they will remember and bring together as friendship connection. Secondly, you can incentivize students to seek help from each other, like Imran has suggested. You okay, ask another student, tak kisahlah dia top scorer ke tak, just tanya je student lain. So maybe before they come to you, say okay, kena ada list of student that you have asked. Well, firstly, you can keep the list of student and build a network from it. That one should be fun. But secondly, you actually make them talk to other students, right? And you can impose mixed ranking online groups or just mixed race online group, because as you can see, the cluster is very, very race-based, very gender-based. Perhaps you can just impose it dengan niat. I'm just trying to get the weak ties going, right? Because that's what is important in the network. Okay, these are for the teachers, recommendation for the teachers. So yes, while we teach, we learn. So that's why I feel like this teaching really should be a part of our evaluation in the class. But I'm still trying to figure out how to actually give marks for the teaching other people component in my own class as well. Okay. Virtual lectures for learners, for myself, because I was a student. First, contagion influencer. You can teach your friends what you know. You can try to be the influencer and the one who's teaching other people. And you can initiate learning conversation in groups and group collective action, because in the WhatsApp groups that there was a few WhatsApp groups in the CO faculty program, and this WhatsApp group where you can see people initiating conversation and certain things and asking certain deep questions, and that's where the deepest relationship was built, because people were like, okay, this is a safe space and we can talk about certain things here, and very insightful, and I didn't expect to learn that much. So shout out to you guys. You know who you are. Anyway, connections. You can engage and initiate collective online activities as a student as well. So kalau lecturer tu tak engage you, engage on guys tak faham dekat WhatsApp, cuba ada sesiapa boleh tolong terangkan yang ni tak? Pemahaman saya macam ni. Okay, pemahaman saya macam mana? Things like that. It does help a whole lot. And we were in like quite huge confusion when we went through that program. KPT probably didn't know what to do with us. The companies probably didn't know what to do with us. So we were kind of on our own. We were like, okay, what's happening? How should we go through this? And yeah, so we had quite a few discussions online and through calls, and not being face to face. But yeah, we should engage and initiate these connections. Help and seek help from each other. So be a good friend, essentially. So just try to build the connections and be better friends and diversify. Reach out to people you don't usually reach out to. So maybe a different race, a different faculty, a different gender even. So build the weak ties and build up your networks. It will be good for you in the future, inshallah. So is there a crisis of higher education? Yes, if educators are not able to foster this sense of community and bring out this greater whole from the interaction, is my opinion, my humble opinion. And no, if the educators really cultivate the communities and make the learning bug go viral amongst the students through these communities, and the students feel proud to be at UKM, proud to be in this class. So I think there is a whole lot of value in higher education. And again, the graphite and the diamond and pencil and the diamond. Yeah. So takeaways, I would like to remind you, characteristic of networks. Two things, like I said, super spreaders, importance, centrality, and cluster. Secondly, complex networks of learning. So the emergence of a sense of community, the emergence of something else, the emergence of a whole. Thirdly, staying relevant in the new norm, we need to actively foster student connections and communities. So that's it from me. Happy to talk more about your networks and answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fatimah. I am quite sure I make a prediction about my past, but I'm quite sure I would have loved math if you were my teacher. So
oh, thank you.
I said that, okay. I'm on right now. Are there any questions for Dr. Fatimah?
Hello, Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Ya, saya Maniza daripada Fakulti Sains Kesihatan.
Hai Manisa.
Ya, it's very interesting sebab saya tak mahir dengan maksudnya data yang melibatkan connection ni semua, saya mau kepada clinical study. Dan saya boleh lihat dia punya kepentingan tu once we faham the connection and how we can help ourselves and also students. Okay. Dan saya sangat tertarik dengan questionnaire yang Dr. Fatimah gunakan tu, dan I'm just wondering kalau misalnya berminat ya baca mana.
Boleh. Nanti email saya boleh emailkan questionnaire tu. So Dr. Manisa boleh sebarkan pada student lah, tapi itulah data collection selepas tu dia agak tedious lah kan sebab masukkan. Tapi kami tengah fikir kot lah ada master student ke apa boleh buatkan Google Form ke kan, kita boleh
it will be great kan kalau misalnya kita boleh memudahkan bila kita dapat data tu nanti. I think
tapi sebenarnya saya dah bincang dengan kawan saya daripada statistik, tapi dia kata nanti data tu kita bertanggungjawab pula sebab kita patutnya kerahsiaan, tak boleh bagi nama student. So sebab tu macam lecturer kena filter and then dia bagi nombor je dekat kita or something like that. So tapi kalau dalam UKM mungkin kerahsiaan tu boleh okey kot sebab kita sesama kita macam tak kisah. So yang tu kena figure out lah. Saya pun fikir juga pasal nak buat this online form where lecturers boleh masukkan, tapi data is responsibility. So
agreed.
Dia memang like a very powerful weapon.
Lagi satu
saya pun takut sebenarnya nak kumpul banyak-banyak sangat sebab nanti waktu
lagi satu saya terfikir kalau misalnya kita approach pada residential colleges, sebab UKM kita ada 12 college kediaman dan di mana disitulah sebenarnya dari segi leadership to groom. I'm not saying that faculty not able to groom student leadership, boleh. Cuma bila dekat residential college ni pelajar lebih terdedah pada fakulti yang berbeza, different background, Sains,
betul. Tapi itulah dalam COVID sekarang kan dah tak duduk kat college kan. So kalau dia kembali kepada normal mungkin boleh lah, tapi sekarang ni semua pelajar dekat rumah, so saya rasa belum lagi sekarang.
Saya juga timbalan pengetua College Tun Syed Nasir campus sekarang.
Bagus.
I'm interested to collaborate with you and kita tengok
boleh.
Buatlah nanti nanti
boleh. Boleh.
Thanks Dr. Fatimah, it's very interesting, very good sharing. Well done.
Thank you. Saya bercakap pasal research saya. Okay.
We've got some questions and comments for you, Dr. Fatimah.
Okay.
Amran says, this is an excellent and timely presentation. We want students to learn from each other as much as learning from us as lecturers. But often peer teaching and learning becomes student A copying from student B. Peer learning equals student copying from each other. So this is the question. My question is, can you read the question?
Kejap, saya tengok.
Do you have any ideas how we can incorporate accountability into peer teaching?
Okay. Betul, yang tu betul kan. Sebenarnya dari segi, saya baru buat kelas beberapa minggu lah kan. I teach linear algebra. So in linear algebra there's the counting part which is the easy part, and online calculator semua ada. So I give them more like a proving part, but I actually teach them proving in the class. Proving dia bukan, it's a way of thinking lah. So it's like if my way so far this few weeks saja yang saya baru mengajar ni, it's like okay macam ni in class I actually tell them, saya nak awak terangkan kat saya macam mana awak dapat jawapan tu, tulislah dalam perkataan bahasa Melayu ke bahasa Inggeris, saya nak awak tulis spesifik daripada matrix ni yang ni gunakan yang ni. So if the student have learned from the other student dan dapat jawapan dia boleh terangkan, kalau ayat dia sebiji sama dengan student satu tu mungkin lah kan. Tapi saya rasa biasanya penerangan yang berbentuk proving one by one dia takkan sama lah. So itu salah satu cara lah, but still you have to look closely at each answer. But still so far my student jawapan dia lain dan nampak mereka masih tak berapa grasp lagi, but I think that's the way you have to go for an open book examination. Not so much how you calculate. Mathematics has never been about how fast you calculate. It has always been about how you get the answer. So if you cannot explain how you get the answer, you won't get the marks.
Right. Cool. I think Imran also said the same thing when he presented his webinar a few sessions ago, that the calculation is not as important as the explanation to how.
Exactly. Then that is the problem. Industry complain. Student tak reti nak explain. So that's our core sebenarnya, I think. So dekat Mary pun they say they don't know how to tell stories. Macam ni doktor nak jadikan student ni pandai. My point of view is they don't know how to tell stories because they don't understand the underlying stories. So.
And one of the things that I observed from your presentation, a few things I observed. One of the things was that in your experience at Maybank, the sense of play is very important. When you had that experience where you have to have a hat, I was trying to visualize the kind of hat that I would probably purchase to put on. So the sense of play is important. I think that's something else that's another analogy that we can bring into our classroom,
Yes.
where maybe we are taking things, ourselves included, too seriously. We need to take things seriously, especially whatever it is that we're learning, but we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously. So I think that analogy of putting on a hat and putting on a show for yourself and maybe making yourself look like a schmuck, whatever, but still, it's that sense of play that allows learning and possibilities of learning to thrive, And another observation that I made based on your presentation, as well as based on previous webinars, is that you learn better and you retain knowledge longer when you teach others. This is also research. So I think that's something that's reinforced in this presentation, that the learning happens and retained in our mind when we are able to then teach somebody else. So I like what you made, the comment that you made as well. And a good question that you asked in this third part of the presentation is, what makes a leader? Or what Prof. Hamdi, our former Vice Chancellor, asked, what's the definition of a leader? And I like, this is actually the first time I'm hearing this definition of a leader, one who creates a sense of community. I think that's something we could probe as well in our classroom context, especially when you said in Malaysia, our demographics, we've got the races, we've got education background, we've got gender, of course, we've got class, we've got, Peninsula, Sabah, Sarawak, we've got demographics, as a student yourself, you could just reflect for us when you were growing up and you were at school, as you kind of like went through high school and then you went to UIE, you went to Imperial, how did and you said yourself you're an introvert, how did your own social circle of friends color your ability to network with others?
Oh, that's a good question. Deep question. Okay. Firstly, I think my identity is Muslim. I wear headscarf. So in the UIA, of course, everyone wears a headscarf. But I think just UIA is a good microcosm of different just religious belief. Ada orang sembahyang macam ni, ada orang sembahyang macam ni. So just UIA a bit. So I was already communicating with a lot of people, and I forced myself to join debate actually because I wanted to speak English. Sebenarnya I don't speak English with my friends or at home so much. At home adalah sikit-sikit, but not completely in English. So the debate club was the first place where I actually speak English completely, no Malay at all. So I went to the debate club, and people in the debate club usually have very different background from me, daripada law, daripada economics, daripada convent school, daripada tak adalah sekolah agama, I sekolah agama. So it's like I like to make weak ties, I think. Like in the level, I like to create this sort of weak ties with other people, and just reach out to different clans or people that I've never really investigated before and never really made friends before. Hopefully I made a good impression on them. Tapi itu kat UIA, so there was a relatively secure environment, dekat dengan rumah, I can just go back rumah 15 minit je per UIA. So it's like probably why I was so confident, because mesti halaman rumah je, because because my parents didn't let me go overseas. So I'll be like, okay, fine, I'll just go to the closest university to home and I'll show you what I can do. So because they promised to let me go afterwards. So I'll be like, okay, tak apa. Lepas tu kita pergi. But you know, UIA, I'll do everything. So join the debate club, took language classes, became semi student leader. But I was an introvert, so tak adalah jadi MPP ke apa. But you know, I did force myself to meet new people lah. But before I went overseas, I was like aware that I'm a Muslim, aware I had scarf semua. So I macam takut lah kan. So I took like comparative religious class lah by brother Syakiri lah, whatever, sebab kat UIA we had those things. So I learned like, okay, ada religion macam ni, kalau dia tanya dia pakai tudung macam mana, macam ni. So when I went overseas, people was a bit like, okay, she's wearing her scarf, what can I do? But usually if I go approach them and talk to them and they were like, oh, okay, she can talk, and then she doesn't mind talking, and then it's like, okay, and then I tell them, okay, these are my boundaries, I'm a Muslim, macam ni, and then once the axioms, in mathematics we have axioms, so once the axiom of my relationship is already defined, apa yang I do that I can't do, then we were friends. Even now I'm having meetings with my friends from India every week. We're working on the data, the friendship data actually. So like, because Paul is my friend that I have a meeting with every week, and Nikki is like, she's a kawan perempuan, and they really know my boundaries, and they were like, and they tell other people, okay, Fatimah dia tak macam ni, Fatimah makan apa, semua macam tu. So I like to reach out to other groups, but because I wear the headscarf, I think it has helped me a lot, because the people that want to be friends with me, they are open-minded, one, and then I get a chance to draw the boundary ni macam ni, and then because I have very clear boundaries, they accept it, and then we become friends and we understand each other.
I think just hearing that story from you, one thing that comes to mind is the distinction between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So from what you shared with us, it sounds like you actually, albeit you say that you're an introvert, but you have an inbuilt motivation. You've got the drive, you've got the inquisitiveness. You in fact set goals for yourself. So I think there's a comment here by one of our attendees, Dr. Pramila. Make the students confident so that there is learning engagement. I think that's also something we need to focus on. Wouldn't you agree? Because the intrinsic motivation needs to come from, if they're not confident themselves to know that, okay, this is what matters to me. My teacher sets the goals, I have to do the assignment, but over and above that, I have certain things I want to achieve. Like you said, when you joined UIA, got certain things you wanted to achieve over and above the getting your degree, right? So you know, would you probe that a little bit, the motivation? Because as teachers, we assume that we are the ones setting the bar for our students, you know, setting the goal for our students. So we motivate them by maybe giving them marks, by you know, giving them extra attention. But it sounds as if, in your experience, it sounds as if the motivation comes from you. And even our friend Imran is saying motivation is infectious. I agree. I mean, especially you're in good company, you kind of get really hooked up on it, you know. So maybe, you know, that element is the kind of the key, you know, that motivation. Does it come from the teacher? Does it come from within the student, or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Maybe I was motivated because I was just like, okay, I am an introvert essentially because I get my energy from being alone. But I do like human connections. Kan? Duduk rumah, relax, suka pula MCO ni, walaupun macam okay, kesian orang dapat penyakit, tapi I like being at home. In fact, I asked my dekan, cakap I need to work from home lah dekan, kan. So but I realized the importance of human connection because it opens your eyes to different worldviews.
Right.
The of weak ties, or even having close friends that you can share anything with is very important. So yeah, firstly, sometimes also in classes, budak-budak masuk universiti dia tak ada cita-cita dia nak masuk universiti je. So dia macam ambil je course mana-mana yang dapat. So if that is what happened, you need to, I think as a lecturer, you need to highlight apakah kelebihan course matematik ni. So I usually highlight to them, okay, kat Maybank dia macam ni, dia orang yang tak ambil matematik dia tak faham apa ni. You have the power to tell the story. You. Right. Even like COVID ni, I first year, because I gave the talk to the first year mathematics program as the penyelaras kelab. I was like, okay, actually COVID-19 memang tak bagus untuk orang lain, but it's good for you because you can work remotely with other people's data. But you need to be able to tell the story. If you just output, your machine can do it better than you. So it's like it's always the motivation and why you learning this. All subjects, semua fakulti mesti ada intrinsic motivation. Why they are actually teaching that course to the students. So I think it's both. Some students come in dah highly motivated dah. Lepas tu dia dengar memang dia terbakar and then dia pun pengaruh kawan-kawan dia. Macam tu lagi kita nak api-apikan dia lah kan. But if not, I think it is the responsibility of the lecturer to make them see what they can do with their life by learning this. Because dia orang macam belajar tapi sebab dia terpaksa macam tu nak lulus universiti, tak tahu kenapa. So it's also hala tuju kehidupan. Ya, religiously or kalau fikir duit pun monetarily even, but both lah motivation. What do you want in your life, and also your future lah. InsyaAllah.
Okay. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Fatimah. I hope the audience will agree with me. That was a very engaging, motivating, and enriching session. So we wish you the very best in your own career as an educator as you begin your journey, and we hope more sharing sessions from you, inshallah, as you learn your own student population as you come to understand the networks and how the patterns that emerge. Maybe you would like to come back and share with us in the coming years, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. Yeah, I like talking about my research and I feel like there's a lot of great educators at UKM. Dia macam-macam mereka buat tapi mungkin kita tak tahu. So I kudos to pengajaran lah. This is a way to build the network.
Right.
So if you can map network among us, siapa yang ada certain things in the education ke, maybe there'll be like I can visualize, oh yang ni pakar untuk guna Mac ke apa kan, Prof. Ini pakar untuk bahagian-bahagian network ke apa ke. So it would be also beneficial for us among educators to have like a network map of siapa kepakaran apa dalam UKM itself sebenarnya.
Right.
So yeah. So I hope.
Well said. So on behalf of Prof Kamal, Prof Insinyur Ahmad Kamal Arifin, pengarah di Pusat Pengajaran, dan barisan pengurusan di pengajaran, on behalf of the management of pengajaran, we would like to thank you so much, Dr. Fatimah, as well as the audience for today's session. We hope that you have enjoyed the session and we hope that you will stay tuned for our upcoming webinars. We've got 2 more for 2020 before we end 2020. One for the end of the month and another one at the beginning of December. So look forward to our promotions on our Telegram as well as on our Facebook channel and YouTube channels. So thank you so much, everybody. Hope to see the rest of you in our upcoming session. Thank you, Dr. Fatimah.
Thank you, Dr. Rai. Thank you, pengajaran. Very good job.
Bye. Assalamualaikum. Bye-bye, everybody.